Something strange happens every year when the playoffs arrive. It's as if the NBA turns off the lights of the show and turns on the lights of the interrogation. Suddenly, the fireworks disappear, the inflated stats, the you-know-who-I-am post, and the only thing left is the truth. That truth that doesn't fit in the highlights, but everyone recognizes when the rim shrinks and the ball weighs twice as much. During the regular season, basketball feels like a video game. Games every 2 days, defenses at half speed, players dropping 40 points without breaking a sweat. But in the playoffs, everything changes. Rotations get shorter, defenses bite, and opponents study you as if they were surgeons. You're no longer facing a team, you're facing an obsession. A coach who knows on which shoulder you spin when your hand shakes and what you do when you don't get a call. There, those who live by the trick die by the trick. The one who depends on the whistle doesn't hear it, and the one who depends on ego ends up alone. That's the difference between a regular season player and a playoff player. The first dominates when everything flows, the second survives when everything breaks. That's why the great myths of basketball aren't born in October, they're born in May, because that's when talent isn't measured. Mental toughness is. The ability to attack again after missing 10 times, to stay calm when 20,000 people are screaming that you're a fraud. Playoffs don't create legends, they filter them, and every year the result is the same. Stars who seemed untouchable crumble in front of players who, in theory, didn't stand a chance, and that's when basketball stops being a show and becomes a mirror, one that doesn't lie, doesn't edit, and doesn't forgive, because in the regular season, anyone can shine. But when the shine fades, only then do you see who keeps illuminating. For almost a decade, James Harden was the architect of the most controlled chaos ever seen on a basketball court. He didn't play to the rhythm of the game, he made the game play to his rhythm. He had that irritating calm, that way of dribbling for 20 seconds as if time didn't exist until he found the perfect gap, and when he couldn't find it, he created it. His step back became a trademark, a movement so precise it even confused referees between foul and art. Harden didn't just master the rules, he manipulated them. He knew exactly how much contact he could create before it was called against him. He was a scientist of offense with the body of a shooting guard and the mind of a chess player. In Houston, basketball became his laboratory. The Toyota Center was his temple. Dim lights, slow pace, and defenders falling one after another. Night after night, he manufactured impossible numbers. Seasons of 36 points per game, 50-point triple-doubles, and that feeling of total control. He was the player everyone feared to face and the one everyone wanted to see fail. And for years, he almost never failed. He won an MVP, led the league in scoring 3 times, and redefined what it meant to be an offensive star in the modern era. In the regular season, Harden wasn't just unstoppable, he was inevitable. The first came in 2015 against the Warriors in Game 5 for a spot in the finals. He finished with 2 for 11 shooting and 13 turnovers, a historic playoff record. His body language said it all, frustrated, empty, out of answers. 2 years later against the Spurs, without Kawhi Leonard or Tony Parker, the story repeated itself. He scored just 10 points, shot 2 for 11 again, and fouled out in a 39-point home loss. And then came 2018, the year that was supposed to redeem him. Houston had the best record in the NBA, 65-17, Chris Paul by his side, the ideal system, the perfect moment. In the Western Conference Finals, the Rockets went up 3-2 against the mighty Warriors, one step away, but without Paul injured, everything fell back on him. In Game 7, Houston missed 27 straight three-pointers, and Harden finished 2 for 13 from deep with 5 turnovers and a look that no longer reflected anger, but resignation. The biggest opportunity of his career vanished before his eyes. Since then, his story has been stuck in a loop. New teams, same promises, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, different jerseys, same ending, big expectations, early eliminations, and that final image repeated to exhaustion, Harden walking to the locker room with his head down as if carrying the weight of a curse he himself had created. Because if those years made anything clear, it's that Harden wasn't a victim of chance. He was a victim of his own method, a system so perfect it couldn't withstand the imperfection of chaos, and the day the shot stopped falling, his illusion of control stopped falling too. Since then, every postseason has been just that, the echo of a trick no one applauds anymore. Sometimes the NBA doesn't wait for a star to be born, it manufactures one. And with Jaylen Green, it did so with surgical precision, a 19-year-old kid, commercial-ready smile, explosive game, and a presence that seemed designed for the algorithm. In a league where highlights matter more than results, Jaylen was the perfect product. Young, athletic, and viral. When Houston selected him with the number 2 pick in the 2021 draft, they weren't just choosing talent, they were choosing a story. The heir to James Harden, the symbol of a rebuild that promised to rise rise again through showmanship, and the message was clear. He is the future. For a while, he played the part perfectly. He flew across the court, dunked in traffic, launched 9-meter step-backs with electric confidence, and every night felt like an audition for history. Houston, still sunk in its rebuild, needed that, a reason to watch again. And Jaylen, with every play, sold them the dream that they were witnessing, the birth of their next great star. But over time, that dream began to fade. Seasons went by, and Jaylen was still the same spectacular player, but not a better one. His averages were solid: 21 points, 4.6 rebounds, 3.7 assists, with 42% from the field and 35% from three. But his growth stalled. His game became predictable, more focused on shining than on building wins. It was an endless loop of empty highlights, and the irony is that Houston gave him everything to succeed. A demanding coach like Ime Udoka, strong-willed veterans like Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, and a young core full of potential: Şengün, Jabari Smith Jr., Amen Thompson. For the first time in years, the team had an identity. 51 wins, second place in the West, the ideal context for Jaylen to prove he could be more than just a pretty name. And for moments, it seemed like he could. Against the Lakers in March, he exploded for 42 points and 7 for 11 from 3, and that night, it felt like the promise was finally being fulfilled. The headlines crowned him, the fans got excited, and he started to believe his own story. But the regular season measures talent, the playoffs measure soul, and that test he still hadn't taken, because behind the lights and the applause, there's still something that can't be bought or manufactured: character, and his was about to be tested. The moment came sooner than expected. Houston, second in the West, faced the Golden State Warriors in the first round. Youth versus experience, momentum versus wisdom. In Game 2, Jaylen Green lived his perfect night. 38 points, 8 threes, the arena on fire, social media flooded. For an instant, the narrative of the new Harden seemed to come true. But it was only a flash. In the next 5 games, his story fell apart. He averaged 13 points, shooting 37% from the field and 29% from 3. And in Game 7, when everything depended on him, he delivered a performance that hurt more for his body language than for the numbers. 3 for 14 from the field, just 8 points without energy or direction. Sometimes you don't need a scandalous collapse to see someone isn't ready. You just have to look into their eyes. And in Jaylen's, there was confusion. He didn't understand what was happening nor how to turn it around. Steve Kerr attacked him without mercy. Every time Green was on the floor, the Warriors hunted him. Curry dragged him out of position. Clay punished him one-on-one. Kuminga, his own draft class peer, exposed him with painful ease. With him on the court, Houston was 11 points worse per 100 possessions. In the last 4 games, his plus-minus was minus 57. They weren't just stats, they were the mirror of a downfall. The media devoured him. Kendrick Perkins. It was his moment, and he wasted it. Stephen A. Smith: I saw absolutely nothing from Jaylen Green when it mattered most. And inside the team, doubts multiplied. An executive summed it up coldly: we want someone who shows up in May, not in March. A few weeks later, his name started appearing in trade rumors, and when the smoke turned to fire, the blow was lethal. A brilliant move on the court, devastating in symbolism. The kid who had arrived to be the future became trade currency to return to the present. Phoenix wasn't his salvation either. Between conflicting reports and questions about his role, his figure faded into the noise. Jaylen Green went from being the face of a franchise to being an asset, a number on a spreadsheet. There was no betrayal, no scandal, just indifference. And in the NBA, that's worse than falling. His story didn't end with an injury or a spectacular failure. It ended in silence. The same silence you hear when the hype fades and all that's left are the cold locker room lights. The names change, but the story remains the same. The difference is that back then there was no algorithm, no cameras in every corner, no constant noise from the show. Before, when a player fell, he did it in silence, and few ever fell with as much beauty as Tracy McGrady. McGrady was the kind of player who made you forget everything else. Watching him play was like watching a dream in slow motion. Perfect movements, effortless elegance, a way of scoring that seemed to defy gravity. He was 6'8" with endless arms and a shooting touch so natural that even Kobe Bryant, who rarely praised anyone, once called him the toughest player I ever had to guard. And he wasn't exaggerating. At his peak, McGrady was pure art. Between 2001 and 2004, he led the league in scoring twice, averaging 32 points per game in 2003 and 28 the following year, with a style that didn't seem of this earth. He was so fluid, so natural that even his misses looked choreographed. He had the talent of a basketball god, but the destiny of an unlucky man. His career was a road full of contradictory signs. Every step forward came with a setback. When he left Toronto to escape the shadow of his cousin Vince Carter, it seemed like the perfect move. But in Orlando, his ideal partner, Grant Hill, managed to play only 47 games in 4 seasons due to injuries. McGrady was left alone carrying a franchise that depended entirely on him. And even so, he made it look easy. 30 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists a night, and the feeling that at any moment he could break the universe. But in the playoffs, the story repeated itself. No matter what he did, something was always missing. The opponent, the context, the health, he never had a truly complete team. And that made him a tragic figure, the player who could do everything except win alone. In 2003, with Orlando up 3-1 against Detroit, he said a phrase that would mark him forever: "It feels good to be in the second round." An innocent comment said in the heat of the moment, but the Pistons won the next 3 games, and that cruel twist of fate followed him for the rest of his career. He never got past the first round as the main star. When he moved to Houston, he found Yao Ming, another massive talent who was also constantly injured. And once again, McGrady carried the weight of failure alone. The numbers were still spectacular, but his body no longer cooperated. Back injuries, knees, shoulders, every season was a reminder of what could have been. His story wasn't that of a player who failed, it was that of a player who never got the full chance to show what he truly was. He didn't lose because of fear or lack of character, he lost to time. And in the NBA, that's a far crueler defeat, because when McGrady stopped flying, the league kept spinning without looking back, and the man who once seemed like the future ended up becoming a memory. The genius who ran out of time. But even memories sometimes refused to die. And on one random night in 2004, when no one expected anything anymore, McGrady defied fate for exactly 35 seconds. It was December 2004. The Rockets were down by 8 points against San Antonio with half a minute left to play. The crowd was already getting up from their seats, resigned to yet another loss. And suddenly, McGrady decided not to accept the script, as if something inside him rebelled, as if that genius time had worn down, refused for a moment to grow old. He caught the ball in the corner and hit an impossible 3. Then he stole the ball and hit another with a foul. He scored again on the next play without looking at the clock, without thinking. And on the final possession, when no one could understand what was happening anymore, he sank one more step back. 4 threes, 13 points in 35 seconds. Game 1. And an entire arena screaming his name as if they couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. What was most striking wasn't the feat itself, but the way he lived it. There were no over-the-top celebrations, no egotistical displays, just a restrained smile, a calm, almost relieved expression, as if those seconds had given him back something he thought he'd lost. It wasn't just a victory, it was revenge. Against the years of frustration, against the injuries, against the labels. McGrady didn't change his story that night. He didn't erase the failures or rewrite his legacy, but for a brief instant, he achieved something greater: to remember and remind us who he truly was. A player who didn't need trophies to be eternal because he had already etched in everyone's memory the kind of magic that doesn't repeat itself. 35 seconds were enough for him to beat the clock, fate, and the sadness of being forgotten. And even though time moved on, that night remained there, suspended, like a promise, fulfilled late, but fulfilled at last. Few nicknames have aged so poorly. Playoff P was born as a declaration of confidence, a way of telling the world that Paul George was different, that when the big games came, he would rise with them. But in the NBA, words are dangerous, and when you don't back them up, they turn against you. For years, George was the exact definition of what one expects from a modern star: versatile, athletic, able to defend and score with equal ease. In Indiana, when the world still didn't fully know him, he went toe-to-toe with none other than LeBron James during the Miami Heat era. Those Eastern Conference series between 2012 and 2014 seemed to announce the birth of a new figure. He had charisma, style, and aesthetically flawless game. He was, in theory, the next evolutionary step of the dominant small forward. But that early shine never fully solidified. After his leg fracture in the 2014 FIBA World Cup, George came back, yes. But something had changed. Physically, he recovered, but mentally, he began to play under a weight few can bear. The pressure of having to prove he was still the same. And when in 2018, already in Oklahoma City, he tried to reinvent himself alongside Westbrook, he did it by proclaiming that now famous nickname, Playoff P. The problem is that the playoffs don't listen to speeches. Since then, the nickname turned into irony. Every lost series, every off-shooting night, every glance to the floor after a Game 6 became fuel for memes. And what was born as confidence turned into a constant reminder of his failures. The hardest moment came in the 2020 bubble when the Clippers blew a 3-1 lead against Denver. George missed everything there was to miss, even a three-pointer that hit the side of the backboard. That image went around the world. It needed no caption. It was the perfect symbol of a player who had broken inside. The irony is that his career on paper remains brilliant. Multiple All-Star selections, All-NBA appearances, solid averages, but his name for years now has been tied to that feeling of an unfulfilled promise. Every time April comes, the question resurfaces, will it be this time? And most of the time, the answer is still no. George was never a fraud. He was an incredible player, trapped in a story he helped create. The nickname that was supposed to lift him up ended up becoming a cage. Because when you call yourself Playoff P, you can't afford to fail. And failing in basketball is part of the game. Perhaps that's the cruelest punishment, having turned his own confidence into a burden. Because since that day, every three-pointer he takes in May isn't measured just by whether it goes in or not. It's measured by the echo of a name that never left him in peace. Joel Embiid is one of those players who make basketball look unfair, too big, too strong, too talented. A center nearly 7 feet tall who can post up, shoot from mid-range, pass the ball, protect the rim, and drop 40 points without breaking a sweat. For years, he was the centerpiece of the most ambitious project in modern NBA history. Trust the process. And for a while, it seemed to work. He won the MVP in 2023, led the league in scoring 2 seasons in a row, and his numbers were absurd: 33 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists per game. He dominated at will. In the regular season, Embiid was a colossus, but when the playoffs arrived, something changed. That feeling of absolute control vanished. What remained was a heavier, slower, more human version of him. The list of disappointments is long, but one defines his story better than any other. 2023, second round against Boston. Philadelphia led the series 3-2 and had the chance to close it out at home. Embiid played well through the first 3 quarters, but in the fourth he disappeared. He missed key shots, lost rhythm, and the team collapsed. In Game 7, the debacle was complete. 15 points on 5 for 18 shooting, while Tatum dropped 51. Elimination was inevitable. And with it came another cycle of excuses, frustration, and a new coach. It wasn't the first time. In 2019, he was on the court when Kawhi Leonard hit that impossible shot, the one that bounced 4 times on the rim before falling in. In 2021, Philadelphia fell to Atlanta with Embiid injured but playing and Ben Simmons passing up a layup under the rim. In 2022, he played through pain again and lost to Miami. Year after year, the pattern repeats: absolute dominance in the regular season, emotional and physical exhaustion in May. The problem is that unlike McGrady, Embiid did have the context. He had all-star caliber teammates, respected coaches, deep rosters, but the story always ends the same, with him looking down and saying it was a disappointing season. That phrase has become a loop, an echo that now sounds hollow. The stats are still impressive, but no one looks at them the same way anymore. The public, even those who admire him, have started to wonder if his style of play, built on contact, free throws, and dramatics, can survive in the playoff ecosystem where whistles go silent and endurance doesn't forgive. Embiid is in many ways the modern face of the regular season player syndrome, a colossal talent trapped in his own body and in a mindset that hasn't yet learned how to suffer. It's not a lack of skill, it's a lack of evolution, because there's something that separates those who win from those who dominate. The first learn how to lose before they learn how to win. And Embiid, so far, doesn't seem to have learned either. Every year, the playoffs do the same thing. They remind us that basketball, no matter how modern, is still a real sport, that no algorithm can withstand the pressure of a tied series, and no slow-motion replay can hide the fear when the ball won't go in. In that arena where the noise fades and only the heartbeats remain, myths unravel and names carry a different weight. Harden, Green, McGrady, George, Embiid, different eras, same mirror, all giants, all capable of dominating the calendar, but not the moment, and yet it would be unfair to call them failures. Because in the end, they all left something behind, a play, a gesture, a fleeting instant that reminded us why we keep watching. Because even when they fail, those seconds of brilliance are enough to make us believe again. The problem isn't that the game exposed them, the problem is that we forget that behind the shine, there are people. People who feel, who doubt, who break just like anyone else, only they do it in front of millions of eyes. And when the lights go out and the show ends, silence remains, a silence that neither judges nor celebrates. It only leaves one question hanging in the air, one that no one can fully answer. How many of those who seem untouchable today will still shine when the game becomes real? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. This was Hoop Secrets, and I'll see you next time.